Welcome to the web series Exploring 9/11, The World Before and After, a production of the National September 11th Memorial and Museum. I'm Clifford Channon. Speaking today with David Ottaway, a former foreign correspondent for the Washington Post, 35 years with the Post, including a time as a bureau chief in the Cairo Bureau, now a fellow at the Woodrow Wilson Center in Washington. Mr. Ottaway has written the book The King's Messenger, Prince Bandar bin Sultan and America's Tangled Relationship with Saudi Arabia. And this is a story of the long relationship, Prince Bandar, who was the Saudi ambassador in Washington for many years, but the long and tangled relationship between these two countries, the U.S. and Saudi Arabia. It covers an awful lot of history because the relationship itself is sort of critical throughout different points of the 20th century. But how would you characterize the nature of that relationship in the early years of its creation?
Well, I think we discovered Saudi Arabia during World War II, when the importance of oil to the United States and to the world was becoming more evident. And its location, because it was so important in the Persian Gulf area. But above all, oil was the key issue. And in fact, American oil men and companies got involved in Saudi Arabia back in the early 1930s. So oil has always been very important to the relationship, and I would say probably the main factor in the growing interest over the decades, first of the oil men in Saudi Arabia and then the U.S. government.
The first elements used to describe the relationship generally, and you go into this in the book, have to do with sort of the exchange of oil for security. In other words, the Saudis have the supply of oil, and the United States, with a real interest in maintaining the flow of oil and its own use of that oil, will guarantee the security that allows that oil to flow. That seemed to be the characteristic of the relationship from the very early days, but carrying on through for decades.
It was indeed. And I would say again, it started in the early 70s when we realized after 1971, the United States no longer was self-sufficient in oil. So we really began to think about where we were going to get our oil abroad and which countries were going to be important to us. And Saudi Arabia, because it has 1/4 of the world's oil reserves, and probably a lot more that they haven't discovered yet, was obviously a very important place in the Middle East that captured the attention of every U.S. government. Well, it started in 1945 when President Roosevelt met King Abdulaziz, who was the founder of the current Saudi kingdom. But after 1973, U.S. governments really focused on Saudi Arabia because they realized it had the ability to even deny us oil and force the oil price up. And so it became ever more important to us.
Let's go back before that critical sort of modern period in the relationship starting in the early 70s. But Saudi Arabia itself is a country that we have learned an awful lot more about in recent years. But I wonder if you could take us back to some of the early elements in the founding of the Saudi state and the kind of country it is, because one of the things that comes clear in your book is there is kind of a mismatch. These are strange bedfellows, the United States and Saudi Arabia, winding up in such a close relationship. But take us back to the kind of society Saudi Arabia is.
Right. Well, Saudi Arabia was first founded in a smaller version of it way back in the mid-18th century when a religious sheikh by the name of Muhammad Wahhab and the first one of the ancient Al Saud, which is the ruling family ever since the 18th century of Saudi Arabia, formed an alliance. And it was an alliance based on the Al Saud family protecting the religion, a reformist Islamic religion that we today call Wahhabism. And the state, as it was forming in Saudi Arabia, pledged to support the Wahhabis and the Wahhab religious people, and to help them spread Wahhabism, which is a very puritanical form of Islam, very strict. And in fact, among the fundamentalist Salafi groups throughout the Islamic world, the Wahhabis are probably the strictest, together with what we now call today the Taliban, religious devotees anywhere in the Muslim world. And this alliance was first formed in the 18th century. Then there were ups and downs in the kingdom, which was invaded by Muhammad Ali coming from Egypt. And anyway, the current Saudi Arabia was put together in 1932. It's the third Al Saud state, the third state founded by the Al Saud family. And the same alliance between the Wahhabi establishment and the Al Saud family are the two key pillars of the state or the kingdom of Saudi Arabia even today.